Jake Morrison stood in the long line at Kepler Station, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. The place was busy as always, filled with travelers from dozens of different worlds. Blue-skinned Veltar walked past with their 4 arms, swinging, while tall Zephyrians floated by on their tentacles. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and alien spices from the food courts. He pulled his jacket tighter around his chest. The fabric was old and worn, but it covered most of the scars that marked his skin. People tended to stare when they saw them, and Jake had learned to avoid that kind of attention. The security line moved slowly. Each person stepped up to the scanner, placed their hand on the blue panel, and waited for the green light. Simple routine. Jake had done this hundreds of times on dozens of stations across the galaxy. Work was work, and mining jobs took him to places where questions weren't asked too often. "Next," called the security officer, a female Veltar with dark spots across her blue forehead. Her name tag read Chief Kothek in several languages. Jake stepped forward and placed his hand on the scanner. The blue light came on, just like always. But instead of the quick beep and green flash he expected, the light started flickering. The scanner made a strange humming noise that grew louder by the second. "Please hold still," Chief Kothek said, her 4 eyes focused on her screen. One of her secondary arms reached for something under her desk. Jake kept his hand where it was, but his muscles tensed. Other passengers in line started to look nervous. A family of humans with young children stepped back. The Zephyrian businessman behind him made worried clicking sounds. The scanner's humming turned into a high-pitched whine. Kothek's eyes went wide as she stared at her display. Her primary arms started moving across multiple control panels while her secondary arms reached for her communication device and her weapon. "Security team to checkpoint 7, she spoke into her comm unit, trying to keep her voice calm. "Code yellow, possible database anomaly." Jake felt the familiar cold knot in his stomach. This was why he stayed away from major stations, why he took jobs in the outer colonies where security was lighter. But he needed passage to the rim, and Kepler Station was the only hub with ships heading that direction. "Is there a problem?" Jake asked, keeping his voice steady. Kothek looked up at him with all 4 eyes. "Sir, I need you to keep your hand on the scanner while we resolve this issue." Around them, other security officers started moving closer. Jake could see them trying to look casual, but their hands were near their weapons. The other passengers had backed away even further, leaving a clear space around the checkpoint. The scanner finally stopped whining and made 3 sharp beeps. Kothek's face went from worried to shocked as she read something on her screen. She looked at Jake, then back at the screen, then at Jake again. "Sir, I need you to come with me for additional screening," she said, standing up slowly. "What kind of additional screening?" Jake asked. "The kind that requires a private room," Kothek replied. 2 more security officers had appeared on either side of the checkpoint. They weren't pointing weapons at him, but they were ready to. Jake looked around at the crowd of nervous faces watching him. Children were crying. Adults were pulling out their communication devices to record what was happening. This was exactly what he had tried to avoid for 12 years. "Am I under arrest?" he asked. "Not yet," Kothek said. "But that could change depending on how cooperative you are." Jake slowly lifted his hand from the scanner. The machine immediately went silent, but the damage was done. Whatever it had found in its database had already set things in motion that he couldn't stop. "Lead the way," he said quietly. Kothek walked around the checkpoint and gestured for Jake to follow her. The security officers fell in behind them as they moved through the station. People stopped what they were doing to stare as the group passed by. Word was already spreading through the crowd. They walked down a corridor that Jake had never seen before, past doors marked with symbols he didn't recognize. The walls were thicker here, and he could feel the hum of powerful electronic equipment behind them. This was the secure section of the station, where important people made important decisions. Kothek stopped at a door marked only with numbers. She pressed her palm to a scanner, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a simple room with a table, 3 chairs, and walls covered with display screens. "Please sit," Kothek said, pointing to the chair facing away from the door. Jake sat down and placed his hands on the table, The security officers took positions by the door while Kothek activated the room's systems. The display screens came to life, showing information that Jake couldn't read from his angle. "My name is Chief Kothek," she said, taking the chair across from him. "I've been doing security work for 23 years. In all that time, I've never seen a scanner react the way yours just did." "Maybe there's something wrong with your machine," Jake suggested. Kothek made a sound that might have been laughter. "We tested that possibility first. The scanner is working perfectly. The problem is what it found when it scanned you." She turned one of the screens toward him. Jake's heart sank as he saw his own image surrounded by data streams and flashing red warnings. At the top of the screen, in letters that seemed to burn his eyes, were the words, "Planet Killer Event Survivor." "According to this," Kothek continued, "the scar patterns on your body match tissue damage from a void swarm attack, specifically the attack on Proxima Centauri b 12 years ago." Jake said nothing. "The problem with that," Kothek went on, "is that there were no survivors from Proxima b. 3 million people died when the void swarm consumed that world. Every single person on the planet was killed." She leaned forward, all four eyes fixed on his face. "So either our database is wrong or you're not supposed to exist. Which is it, Jake Morrison?" Jake looked at the screen showing his information, at the security officers by the door, at the alien woman who held his fate in her 4 hands. For 12 years he had managed to stay hidden. For 12 years he had lived with the knowledge that he was the only one who remembered what really happened on Proxima b. Now that time was over. "I need to speak to someone with a very high security clearance," Jake said finally. "Why?" Kothek asked. "Because what I'm about to tell you is going to change how this galaxy fights the next void swarm attack." 2 hours later, Jake sat in the same room, but now it felt much smaller. Chief Kothek had called in reinforcements. Dr. Lysander Vex floated near the wall, his purple tentacles moving constantly as he studied the data on his portable scanner. The Zephyrian scientist was supposed to be one of the galaxy's top experts on void swarm attacks. Kothek had also contacted someone higher up the chain of command. Jake could hear urgent conversations happening in the hallway outside. Voices, speaking in languages he didn't understand. Whatever his scanner results had revealed, it was big enough to wake up important people. "Show me your arms," Dr. Vex said, without looking up from his device. Jake rolled up his sleeves. The scars were visible now, running in twisted patterns, from his wrists to his shoulders. Some were thin lines, others were broad patches of discolored skin. All of them told the same story to anyone who knew how to read them. Dr. Vex's tentacles stopped moving. He floated closer, his large black eyes reflecting the room's lights as he examined Jake's skin. "Incredible," the scientist whispered. "These burn patterns, I've seen this type of damage before, but only in tissue samples, never on a living person. That's because living persons don't survive void swarm attacks," Kothek said from across the table. "Precisely." Dr. Vex adjusted his scanner and pointed it at Jake's left shoulder. "This scarring here shows exposure to void spore radiation. The cellular damage is consistent with samples we recovered from Proxima's outer orbital stations after the attack." He moved the scanner down Jake's arm. "But look at these healing patterns. This damage didn't happen all at once. It shows repeated exposure over a long period, months, not minutes." Kothek's 4 eyes narrowed. "How long does it take a void swarm to consume a planet? From arrival to complete consumption?" "Usually about 6 hours, Dr. Vex replied. "The swarm strips away all organic matter and moves on. Nothing lives through it." Jake had stayed quiet through their examination, but now he spoke. "I was a mining engineer on Proxima b colony designation PX7748. We had advance warning about the swarm." "Impossible," Kothek said immediately. "Long-range sensors detected the swarm only 17 minutes before they reached the planet. There wasn't time to evacuate anyone." "We didn't get the warning from long-range sensors," Jake said. "We got it from my partner, Lisa Grant. She was monitoring quantum fluctuations in the deep mines. She detected the swarm's approach 6 hours before your sensors did." Dr. Vex's tentacles started moving again, faster this time. "Quantum fluctuations? What kind of equipment was she using?" Lisa was a quantum physicist before she took the mining job, Jake explained. She said the pay was better in the mines, but she never stopped being a scientist. She had set up her own monitoring station in the deepest part of the mine complex. Kothek pulled up a new screen showing the layout of Proxima B's mining operations. According to these records, the deepest mines went down 3 kilometers. 3.7 kilometers, Jake corrected. Lisa's station was at the very bottom. What happened when she detected the swarm? Dr. Vex asked. Jake closed his eyes, remembering that day. She came running into the main work area, screaming about incoming void signatures. Most people thought she was crazy, but the mine supervisor, Carl Hayes, decided to take her seriously. He activated the emergency lockdown protocol. Emergency lockdown? Kotek asked. All the mine shafts sealed automatically. It was designed to protect workers from cave-ins or gas leaks. But Lisa had a different idea. She wanted to use the mining operations fusion cores to power something called a quantum dampening field. Dr. Vex stopped moving entirely. A quantum dampening field? That's purely theoretical technology. Lisa didn't think so, Jake said. She spent 4 hours rigging the fusion cores to her quantum equipment while the rest of us prepared for the worst. When the void swarm hit the surface, she activated the field. What did it do? Kotek asked. It didn't stop the swarm, Jake said. Nothing can stop them when they're feeding. But it changed how time moved around us. What we experienced as 8 months underground was actually 3 years in real time. The room went silent. Dr. Vex's scanner made quiet beeping sounds as he processed what Jake had said. Time dilation, the scientist said finally. A quantum dampening field could theoretically create a localized temporal distortion, but the power requirements would be enormous. We had 6 fusion cores, Jake said. Lisa burned through all of them, keeping the field active. Kotek was typing rapidly on her control panel. I'm accessing classified files from the Proxima incident. There were some anomalous readings that were never explained. She paused, reading something on her screen. There were quantum distortions detected in the planet's crust for almost 3 years after the attack. The investigating team assumed it was residual damage from the void swarm's feeding process. It wasn't residual damage, Jake said. It was us living in slow time while the swarm finished its work above. How many people were in the mines? Dr. Vex asked. 48 total, Jake replied, including Lisa and myself. How many survived? Jake was quiet for a long moment. 3. The radiation still got through the field just slowly. We lost people every week. Lisa lasted 4 months before the exposure killed her. In the end, it was just me and 2 others, Pete Cooper and Maria Santos. Where are Cooper and Santos now? Kotek asked. Pete died 2 years ago. Radiation sickness finally caught up with him. Maria? I don't know. She disappeared after we were rescued. Changed her name, probably. Like I should have done. Kotek stood up and walked to the far side of the room. She spoke quietly into her communication device for several minutes. When she returned, her expression was different. I just spoke to my supervisor, she said. They're accessing files that were sealed by the Galactic Council after the Proxima incident. Deep black files that most people don't even know exist. She sat back down and looked directly at Jake. They found records of a quantum field experiment that was buried in the official reports. An experiment that the Council decided was too dangerous to acknowledge publicly. Dr. Vex's scanner beeped again. The radiation signature matches, he said. This man was definitely exposed to void spore radiation over an extended period. His story fits the physical evidence. Kotek activated another screen. Jake Morrison, you are officially the only confirmed survivor of a void swarm planet killer event. As of right now, you are also the most important person on this station. Why? Jake asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. Because, Kotek said, intelligence reports suggest the void swarm is massing for another attack, and you're the only person alive who's observed them for months and lived to tell about it. Jake found himself telling the story he had never told anyone before. For 12 years he had carried these memories alone. but now they spilled out in the sterile light of the interrogation room. The field worked better than Lisa hoped, he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the memories. When the void swarm hit the surface, we barely felt it at first. Time was moving so slowly for us that their attack seemed to happen in slow motion. Dr. Vex leaned forward, his tentacles curled with concentration. What did you observe about their attack patterns? Everything, Jake replied. We had monitoring equipment connected to the surface. We could watch them work. The swarm doesn't just consume randomly. They're organized, methodical. They start with the largest concentrations of organic matter and work their way down. Kothek was recording everything, her 4 hands moving across different control panels. How long did the surface attack last from your perspective? 3 days, Jake said. 3 days of watching the planet die above us. We could see them strip away the forest first, then the cities, then even the bacteria in the soil. They left nothing alive. But you said you were underground for 8 months, Dr. Vex noted. Jake nodded. After they finished with the surface, some of them stayed behind. The main swarm moved on, but a few of their bioships remained in orbit. They were scanning, searching for any traces of life they might have missed. Did they find you? Eventually. About 2 months into our time underground, they started sending probe spores down into the planet's crust. That's when the radiation exposure began. Jake rolled up his sleeve again, pointing to a cluster of scars near his elbow. These are from the first probe that got through our field. Lisa managed to strengthen the dampening effect, but she couldn't stop everything. Tell us about the radiation, Kothek said. It wasn't like anything in your medical books, Jake replied. Void spore radiation doesn't just kill cells. It changes them, makes them hungry for organic matter just like the swarm itself. Dr. Vex's scanner made alarmed beeping sounds as he pointed it at Jake's scars. Fascinating. The cellular structure here shows signs of modification, but instead of consuming surrounding tissue, it appears to have formed a protective barrier. Lisa figured that out, Jake said. The radiation was trying to turn us into something like the swarm, but the quantum field was interfering with the process. Instead of killing us quickly, it created these adaptations. What kind of adaptations? Kothek asked. Jake was quiet. For a moment, then he closed his eyes and concentrated. After a few seconds, he opened them and looked directly at Dr. Vex. Your scanner just detected quantum fluctuations that match void swarm signatures, didn't it? Dr. Vex checked his device and his tentacles went rigid with shock. How did you know that? Because I can feel them, Jake said simply. The radiation changed something in my nervous system. I can sense void swarm presence across subspace. It's like having a constant low-level headache that gets worse when they're around. Kothek and Dr. Vex exchanged glances. This was information that could change everything about how the galaxy defended itself. Continue your story, Kothek said. What happened to the others? Jake's expression darkened. The radiation got worse over time, even with Lisa constantly adjusting the field. More probe spores kept getting through. People started getting sick in the 2nd month. How many died? Dr. Vex asked gently. Carl Hayes was first. The radiation exposure triggered massive organ failure. Then the Martinez family, all 4 of them in 1 week. By the 4th month, we were losing 2 or 3 people every few days. And Lisa? Lisa kept working until the end, Jake said. She was trying to boost the field strength enough to block all the radiation, but it required more power than we had. She was manually adjusting the quantum resonance frequencies for 18 hours a day. The stress killed her before the radiation could. Jake stood up and walked to the room's single window. Outside, he could see the normal activity of the station. People living their lives unaware of the conversation happening in this room. After Lisa died, the field started failing, he continued. Pete Cooper and Maria Santos tried to maintain it, but they weren't quantum physicists. We lost power to 2 of the fusion cores. The field coverage became patchy. How did you survive when the others didn't? Kothek asked. I was working in the deepest part of the mine when the worst radiation burst came through, Jake replied. The quantum field was strongest there. Pete and Maria were in the upper levels when it hit. They got a massive dose all at once. But they survived initially? For a while. But they were changed more than I was. Pete started showing signs of void conversion. His skin turned gray and he stopped needing food. Maria developed the ability to sense electromagnetic fields from incredible distances. The radiation was turning us into something else. Dr. Vex was taking notes frantically. How long were you alone? 3 months, Jake said. 3 months in that mine with just the bodies of my friends in the failing quantum field. I survived on emergency rations and recycled water. The radiation kept coming, but in smaller doses. How? Were you rescued? The Galactic Council sent a survey team to Proxima 3 years after the attack, Jake explained. They were checking to make sure the planet was completely dead before declaring it safe for mineral extraction. Their deep core scanners detected the quantum anomaly. Kothek pulled up another file. I'm looking at the rescue report now. It says they found one survivor in critical condition, suffering from unknown radiation exposure. They didn't know what to do with me, Jake said. The medical team had never seen anything like my condition. They put me in quarantine for 6 months while they ran tests. Why didn't they report your survival publicly? Dr. Vex asked. Because admitting that someone survived a void swarm attack would have caused panic, Jake replied. The galaxy's entire defense strategy is based on the assumption that void swarms are unstoppable. If people knew that survival was possible, even under impossible circumstances, it would change everything. Jake turned back to face them. So they classified my existence, gave me a new identity, and told me to disappear. I've been running mining, jobs in the outer colonies ever since, staying away from major stations and security scans. Until today, Kothek said. Until today, Jake agreed. I knew this would happen eventually. The scars make me easy to identify if someone knows what to look for. Dr. Vex closed his scanner and looked at Jake with new respect. You realize what this means, don't you? Your survival proves that void swarms can be fought. Your knowledge of their behavior patterns could save billions of lives. Jake sat back down, suddenly looking very tired. I know. That's why I never tried to hide permanently. Deep down, I always knew that someday the galaxy would need to know what I learned in those mines. Kothek received a message on her communication device. She read it quickly, then looked up at Jake. Admiral Valdez is on his way from Earth. So is Commander Tor Allen from the Galactic Council's Strategic Defense Corps. They want to hear your story directly. When? Jake asked. They'll be here in 6 hours, Kothek replied. Jake Morrison, I hope you're ready to help us prepare for war. The interrogation room had been transformed into a war room. Admiral Cruz Valdez sat at one end of the table, his weathered face showing the strain of 30 years in the human defense fleet. Across from him, Commander Nix Tor Allen of the Galactic Council's Strategic Defense Corps studied Jake with her large silver eyes. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow under the room's bright lights. Jake had told his story 3 more times in the past 6 hours. Each time, the questions became more detailed, more technical. Now the real work was beginning. Show us the feeding. Pattern data again, Admiral Valdez said. Jake activated the room's holographic display. 3-dimensional images filled the air above the table, showing Proxima B as it had looked during the Void Swarm attack. The planet appeared as a slowly rotating sphere covered in red warning markers. They always start with the largest population, centers, Jake explained, pointing to the major cities, but not for the reasons we thought. It's not about maximizing organic matter consumption, it's about eliminating communication networks. Commander Tor Allen leaned forward. Explain. The swarm is intelligent, Jake said. They know that organized resistance is more dangerous than scattered survivors. So they hit the command centers first, military bases, government facilities, communication hubs. They want to create chaos and prevent coordinated defense. Admiral Valdez studied the display. How long between their arrival and the first city strikes? 47 minutes, Jake replied without hesitation. They spend the first 40 minutes in orbit, mapping all electronic signals and identifying priority targets. Only then do they begin the surface assault. 47 minutes, Commander Tor Allen repeated. That's longer than we thought. It's also their most vulnerable period, Jake added. During the mapping phase, their bioships cluster together in high orbit. They're sharing data through direct biolink connections. If you hit them then, before they spread out for the attack, you could damage the entire swarm. Dr. Vex, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. How do you know about their biolink connections? Because I watched them for months, Jake said. After the surface attack ended, the probe ships that stayed behind maintained constant contact with the main swarm. I could see the energy patterns. From our monitoring equipment, he changed the holographic display to show long-range sensor data. The biolinks create detectable subspace distortions. They're faint, but they're there. More importantly, they follow a specific frequency pattern that repeats every 18 hours. Admiral Valdez made notes on his personal data pad. 18 hours? That's how long it takes them to process and digest a full planet's worth of organic matter, Jake explained. They have to transmit the genetic information back to their home base regularly, or they start to lose data integrity. Commander Tor Allen activated her own display, showing current Galactic Council defense positions. Our latest intelligence suggests a new void swarm is massing beyond the outer rim. If your information is accurate, we need to completely revise our defensive strategy. What's our current strategy? Jake asked. Evacuation, Admiral Valdez said, grimly. When long-range sensors detect an incoming swarm, we have 17 minutes to get as many people off planet as possible. Then we retreat and wait for them to move on. That won't work anymore, Jake said. The swarms are getting larger. This new one has at least 3 times as many bioships as the one that hit Proxima. They're also staying in systems longer, searching more thoroughly for survivors. How do you know that? Commander Tor Allen asked. Jake closed his eyes and concentrated. The familiar cold sensation spread through his nervous system, like ice water flowing through his veins. When he opened his eyes, both officers were staring at him. Because I can feel them, he said simply. Right now, there's a void swarm probe ship about 6 light-years from here. It's been there for 2 days, scanning this sector. Dr. Vex checked his instruments frantically. I'm not detecting anything. Your sensors can't detect them until they're much closer, Jake replied. But the radiation exposure changed something in my brain. I can sense their subspace signatures across vast distances. Admiral Valdez and Commander Tor Allen exchanged glances. This was beyond anything they had hoped for. Jake, Admiral Valdez said carefully, would you be willing to help us develop new defense protocols based on your knowledge? That's why I'm here, Jake replied. Lisa and the others didn't die so I could spend the rest of my life hiding in the outer colonies. They died so someone could warn the galaxy about what's coming. Commander Tor Allen activated a new display showing fleet positions across 12 star systems. We have ships from 8 different species working together on this. It's unprecedented cooperation. It'll need to be, Jake said, studying the tactical data. The old way of fighting, each species defending their own territory, won't work against what's coming. The Void Swarm adapts to individual fighting styles, but they've never faced a truly coordinated multi-species response. What do you suggest? Admiral Valdez asked. Jake stood up and walked to the holographic display. He began manipulating the ship positions, moving them into new formations. Mixed squadron tactics, he said. Human ships are fast and maneuverable. Veltar dreadnoughts have the heaviest armor. Zephyrian bioships can match the swarm's organic technology. If you combine them properly, you create something the swarm has never encountered. He continued adjusting the formation. More importantly, you use my early warning capability to position the fleets where the swarm doesn't expect them. Instead of reacting to their attacks, you ambush them during their vulnerable mapping phase. Commander Tor Allen was taking detailed notes. How much advance warning can you provide? Depends on the size of the swarm, Jake replied. For something the size of the one that hit Proxima, maybe 2 weeks. For the one that's coming, I've been sensing it for almost a month now. The room went silent. A month? Admiral Valdez said quietly. How close are they? Jake closed his eyes again, reaching out with senses that no human should possess. The cold sensation was stronger now, more focused. 3 weeks, he said. Maybe less. They're moving faster than previous swarms, and they're not heading for an outer colony world. Where? Commander Torallen demanded. Jake opened his eyes and looked directly at her. The Vega system. Population of 2 billion across 4 planets. Admiral Valdez was already activating his communication device. All fleet commanders, priority Alpha alert. Prepare for immediate deployment to the Vega system. Admiral, Jake said quietly, there's something else you need to know. Both officers turned to look at him. This swarm is different from the one that hit Proxima, Jake continued. It's not just larger. It's more organized, more intelligent. I think they've learned from their previous attacks. What does that mean? Commander Torallen asked. It means they might know about me, Jake replied. They might know that someone survived their attack and learned their secrets. This new swarm. I think it's coming specifically to finish what the last one started. Dr. Vex looked up from his instruments. You mean this is personal? Jake nodded, grimly. I think the Void Swarm is coming for me, and they're willing to destroy the Vega system to get me. Admiral Valdez and Commander Torallen looked at each other, then back at Jake. Then we'll be ready for them, Admiral Valdez said. Jake, Morrison, welcome to the war. Jake stood on the observation deck of the GCS Infinity, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. Ships from 12 different species moved in perfect formation through space, their running lights creating patterns of color against the black void. Human destroyers flew alongside Veltar dreadnoughts, while Zephyrian bioships pulsed with organic light as they communicated with each other. It had been 3 weeks since the meeting on Kepler Station. 3 weeks of intensive planning, fleet movements, and preparation for something that had never been attempted before. A coordinated strike against a void swarm during their vulnerable mapping phase. The formations look good, Admiral Valdez said, joining Jake at the viewport. Your tactical suggestions have been implemented across all fleet elements. Jake nodded, but his attention was focused elsewhere. The cold sensation in his nervous system had been growing stronger all day. They're close now, less than 6 hours out. Are you certain about their target? Commander Torallen asked. She had arrived on the command ship that morning, along with the final wave of reinforcements. Vega Prime, Jake confirmed. They're heading straight for the main colony world, 2 billion people. Through the transparent aluminum, they could see the evacuation ships departing from Vega Prime's orbital stations. The civilian population was being moved to safe systems, but it was taking time. Too much time. Evacuation is only 60% complete, Admiral Valdez reported, checking his communication device. We need more time. We'll get it, Jake said. The new early warning network is working. Every ship in the fleet knows exactly when and where the swarm will arrive. The early warning network had been Jake's idea. Instead of relying on traditional sensors, they had positioned him on the Infinity with direct communication links to all fleet commanders. His ability to sense void swarm movements across subspace had given them an unprecedented tactical advantage. All ships report ready, Commander Torallen announced. Mixed squadron formations are in position. Jake watched as the fleet arranged itself according to the battle plan they had developed. Human ships formed the outer screening force, using their speed and maneuverability to harass the swarm's outer edges. Veltar dreadnoughts anchored the main battle line, their massive armor designed to absorb the bioship's energy weapons. Zephyrian vessels waited in the center, ready to engage the swarm with organic technology that could match their own. There, Jake said suddenly, pointing toward empty space. They're coming. Admiral Valdez looked where Jake was pointing but saw nothing. Sensors aren't picking up anything yet. They will in about 30 seconds, Jake replied. Exactly 30 seconds. Later, alarms began sounding throughout the fleet. Long-range sensors had detected the incoming void swarm. Hundreds of bioships moving in perfect formation toward Vega Prime. All ships, this is Admiral Valdez, the Admiral broadcast on the fleet-wide channel. Execute Battle Plan Alpha. Remember, we hit them during their mapping phase before they can spread out for planetary assault. Jake closed his eyes and reached out with his enhanced senses. The void swarm's presence was like a cold weight pressing against his mind, but this time, instead of hiding from it, He was using it as a weapon. They're starting their orbital scan, he reported. 47 minutes until they begin surface operations. Fleet positions? Commander Tor Allen asked. Jake could sense the bioships clustering together in high orbit around Vega Prime, just as they had at Proxima. Their biolink connections were active, sharing data about the planet's defenses and population centers. Perfect, he said. They're in tight formation, exactly where we predicted. All biolinks are active. Admiral Valdez activated the fleet communication system. All ships commence attack. Primary targets are the biolink nodes. The battle began, in silence as space battles always did. Jake watched through the viewport as the mixed squadrons moved into attack formation. Human ships darted between the larger Void Swarm bioships, targeting their communication arrays with precise weapons. Fire. Feltar dreadnoughts pounded the swarm's heavy assault vessels with massive energy cannons. Zephyrian bioships engaged in strange organic combat, their living hulls adapting to counter the swarm's attacks. Direct hit on lead bioship came. A report from the human squadron leader. Their communication array is down. Veltar heavy cruiser reporting successful strike on Swarm Cluster 7, announced another voice. Jake felt the change immediately. As the biolink connections were severed, the Void Swarm's coordination began to break down. Instead of acting as a single intelligent entity, the individual bioships started operating independently. It's working, he said. They're losing cohesion. But the swarm adapted quickly. The bioships began spreading out, abandoning their tight formation to avoid further concentrated attacks. Some of them started descending toward Vega Prime's atmosphere. They're beginning surface operations early, Jake warned. Evacuation status? 85% complete, Admiral Valdez replied. We need 15 more minutes. You'll get them, Jake said. He turned to Commander Tor Allen. Signal the Zephyrian squadrons. Tell them to execute containment protocol. The Zephyrian bioships moved to intercept the descending swarm vessels. Their organic hulls shifted and changed, adapting to match the Void Swarm's technology. It was biological warfare on a scale never before seen. Jake felt something else through his enhanced senses. Surprise. The Void Swarm had never encountered organized resistance during their mapping phase. They had never faced an enemy that could match their biotechnology. For the first time in galactic history, a Void Swarm was being forced to retreat. Swarm vessels are pulling back from the planet, reported the Zephyrian squadron leader. They're regrouping in outer orbit. Evacuation complete, Admiral Valdez announced. All civilian ships have cleared the system. Jake watched as the last evacuation transports jumped to hyperspace. 2 billion people were safe. The plan had worked. But the battle wasn't over. The Void Swarm was adapting, learning from this encounter. They would be more dangerous next time. They're withdrawing, Jake said, sensing the bioships moving away from Vega Prime. But they're not giving up. They're going to regroup and try a different approach. How long do we have? Commander Tor Allen asked. Jake concentrated, reaching out across vast distances with senses that no human should possess. 6 months, maybe 8. They'll study what happened here, develop new tactics. When they come back, they'll be ready for our strategies. Admiral Valdez looked out at the fleet, now victorious but scarred from battle. Several ships had been lost and many others showed damage from the bioships' weapons. Then we'll be ready too, he said. We have something they don't expect. A human who understands their nature and can track their movements. Jake touched one of the scars on his arm, remembering Lisa Grant and the others who had died in the mines of Proxima B. Their sacrifice had made this victory possible. The galaxy is different now, he said quietly. For the first time, we've proven that Void Swarms can be fought and defeated. People will have hope instead of just fear. Commander Tor Allen was already planning the next phase. We need to establish permanent early warning stations in every major system, ships equipped with communication links to you. And we need to train more people to recognize Void Swarm signatures, Admiral Valdez added. Jake can't be everywhere at once. Jake nodded, but he was thinking about something else. The battle had revealed something important about the Void Swarm's nature. They weren't just mindless destroyers. They were intelligent, adaptive, and capable of learning from their mistakes. "There's something you both need to understand," he said. "This wasn't just a random attack. The swarm came here specifically because they knew about me. They wanted to eliminate the only person who had survived their assault and learned their secrets." "How do you know that?" Commander Torallen asked. "Because I could sense their intentions during the battle," Jake replied. "They weren't just trying to consume Vega Prime. They were hunting for me specifically." Admiral Valdez and Commander Torallen exchanged worried glances. "If that's true," Admiral Valdez said, "then you're not just our greatest weapon against them, you're also their primary target." Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about the future. The Void Swarm would return, and when they did, they would be ready for everything that had happened today. But the galaxy would be ready too. For the first time in history, there was real hope of victory against the ultimate enemy. "Let them come," he said quietly. "Lisa and the others didn't die so I could hide. They died so someone could teach the galaxy how to fight back." The scars on his arms seemed to pulse with faint light as he spoke, reminders of the price that had been paid for this knowledge. Jake Morrison, the last survivor of Proxima B, had become something more than human. He had become the galaxy's guardian against the dark,